Alrighty. What is up, Metro family? How we doing today? There you go. I saw Ed was breaking out his birthday moves a little bit. I saw that. Happy belated to you, brother. I am so happy and I am so grateful to be a part of this family with you guys. And like, speaking of that and speaking of our family, we're always growing. So we got some amazing new announcements, new additions to our family today. So Evie is going to cue it up for you guys. Let's go ahead and just welcome all of these amazing people. We have Kala, we have Stephanie, Ruby, Lars, Beth, Ryan, Judy, and Kinjal. I'm sorry I went a little quick, but you guys are all awesome. And we have a power-packed, jam-packed, awesome meeting for you all today. So I'm going to kind of condense it a little bit down for you and get it started. So we're not going to do any bucket fills today because we have our awesome risk management with BB, as well as a special guest with BB as well. But real quick, what I want to do is turn it over to one of our friends and agents here at this office, is my friend Joe Fair, who has a quick announcement regarding showing time that he wanted to share with you guys real quick.
All right, glad I got on in time. All right, I'm told I have literally 60 seconds, so I'll make it really quick. First, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So everybody's aware of the issue of Zillow purchasing showing time, correct? And we all don't like that because we're Keller Williams agents and we understand that our data has value. So long story short is I contacted both CRMLS and SDAR. I expressed to both of them that this is a huge issue, and effectively SDAR understands this is a problem, and they are going to roll out an alternative to showing time probably within the next month or so. So they're just trying to pick which vendor they want to use. And once they've done that, they will have a polite announcement that says, if you happen to want to use this other showing service, then go for it. They're not going to publicly bash any service providers or anything like that, you know, as they shouldn't. But the good news is that they've listened to us. The emails, for those of you that sent in emails, that was actually quite effective. They didn't respond because they were not sure how to respond. But they were, I spoke to the COO there at SDAR. They are very aware that this is a problem. And they have responded. So good work, everyone.
Thank you so much, Joe, for sharing that with us, because obviously this is something that affects all of us and how we do business. So I appreciate you kind of going to bat for us on our behalf. So thank you so much for that. We're going to go straight into the launch and growth spotlights. So BB, take it over, my friend.
Thank you, Mike. Do we have slides, Evie?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, well, we want to give a huge shout out in the Launch and the Growth Coaching Program. Congratulations in Team ALICIA. Eric Harris in Growth, Open and Escrow on his own listing. Great job. Mustafa took a new listing on, and he'll have that one coming soon. And in her Launch division, Eric Robinson, Open Escrow on his own listing. Great job, Eric. And Paul Tolentino got another BRE signed. Great job, everybody. On Team Clarissa, Min closed his third escrow and he graduated from the launch coaching and he's staying in the growth coaching program with Clarissa. Great job. And Jonathan got 2 BRE signed from her virtual open buyers seminar. Great job. And then Carlos got a BRE signed. In Team Coach K, in his growth division, Matt Thornburg picked up a listing against a 3% listing agent. Great job, Matt. And Brad Darlington picked up his first launch listing. Congratulations. And then on Team Vinny, rounded it out, Dave Caston, great job. Got his first buyer under contract in launch. Back to you, Delgado.
Thank you, BB. So awesome for all the success stories that are coming out of this office. I'm grateful and proud to be a part of it, and I know you guys are too. So whenever you see these amazing people we just mentioned, go ahead and just say what's up to them and congratulate them, please. So we're going to go to the SMP spotlight with our man, Eric Gilman. Go for it, brother.
Good afternoon, everybody. Holy freaking hellstorm out there. What a great day to cozy up in your house with a nice blanket, your laptop, and listen to 5 minutes about client retention from none other than the knife guy. Who's with me? I can hear you through your mute. It's cool. I appreciate keeping me on the Brady Bunch.
Woo!
Before I forget, mark your calendars. If you're driving, don't do that. But mark your calendars directly after the meeting next week. I will be teaching a class on client retention. Our team for the last decade hasn't just been selling knives and changing lives. That is what we do. But we built a business that is over 80% repeat and referral-based business. Next Wednesday after the meeting, I'll be teaching in about 35 minutes my 7 keys for lifetime client retention. Okay, everybody on this call knows intuitively or not, but according to Forbes, it costs you might want to write this down, 5 times more time and marketing budget to get a new client than it does to retain a current one. Okay, and our most valuable assets, don't get it twisted, is your time and your budget. And so that's where our team comes in too. And that's why I'm super stoked to be here today. I don't know about you, but I've been looking forward to this meeting. I'm not kidding, all day. Keller Williams Metro was one of the first meetings that I ever did in my career over half a decade ago. And what we do is we help agents build relationships with clients using their gifting and appreciation system. Can we work with so many people already? This is my favorite part because I'm looking at the Brady Bunch mode. Wave your hands in the air like you just don't care if you've got Cutco knives at home. Cool. So, and don't feel bad if you don't. I'm here to help. Our team, instead of giving gifts like wine and gift cards and champagne, I want you to think about how does the gift you're giving or the way you appreciate your clients represent the lifetime relationship you plan on having with them. And people like Mike Law, and I'm looking at Chris Spade, they know that it's not consumable. It's not going to get thrown in the trash. They want to give something that keeps them top of mind forever. And so they give a product called Cutco, which, if you have not heard of it, is a brand of extraordinarily high quality, 100% American made. Every day ending in Y is a good day to buy American. We all know that. And we take that brand that's synonymous. It's like the quality of a Rolex watch with a guarantee of a snap-on tool. And we custom engrave it with your name and your logo and your tagline. I even got my new fancy light so you can see our engraving better. I'm going to follow up with my information afterwards. I'm happy to obviously talk to people about samples and whatnot, but I know we're short on time and I love Metro so much and respect your time. I know I have exactly 5 minutes, so I'll be wrapping it up soon. But because they're engraved, you can shout it out. I can hear you through your mute. That means they're 100% tax. That's right, deductible. Tax deductible. You can write off the entire cost of the gift. They range in price from $100 to $200 on average, but really it just brands you on something that's first class that they use forever. So I think that's it. I want to wrap it up here. Obviously, in respect of time, I am going to give away $100 of free Cutco at the end of this because we all know the only thing better than Cutco is free Cutco. Exactly. There's already not enough reason to stick around for the whole lineup today. I'm going to do this at the end of the meeting. I also like to reward people for taking action now on things they know they might want to do for their business eventually anyway. Think about it. Where are people now more in the history of the entire world? They are home.
Their kitchens.
And every person on the planet, whether they're a chef or not, uses a knife to cut food into smaller pieces. That's a fact. So it's perfect for everybody. I want to reward people for taking action. So if you meet with me, I'll go through our whole program. It'll take 15, 20 minutes via Zoom. I'm going to put my info in the chat right here. Pull out your phones. Here's how you get entered in the drawing. Okay. You're going to have $100 of free Cutco. All you got to do is text me. You're going to text me with your name to get entered in the drawing. If you'd like to set up a time to meet, it takes 15 to 20 minutes via Zoom. You're going to put the word sharp, S-H-A-R-P, like, wow, that Cutco knife is sharp. I'll send you back times to meet. We'll do it via Zoom. There's no obligation to get anything. If you do decide to get something, as we all know, the only thing better than Cutco is free Cutco. I'll buy you a knife for your own home. So put the word sharp in there to get entered in the drawing. Just do it. Put your name in there. Get entered in the drawing. There's nothing to lose. You can win some free Cutco. I'll send you a free copy of my book just for meeting with me. But look, that's the bottom line. I love all of you. I appreciate every single person here. And in the interest of promoting scripts and value, know your time, know your worth, and keep to what people say you're going to do. I appreciate, I love you, Metro, and my info's in the chat. Thank you and have a super sharp day.
Woo.
That was an on-point presentation with timing and everything to the T, Eric. So I appreciate that, man. Very sharp, and I'm gonna dad joke you right there with that one. So let's move on to another amazing section of this meeting, to our movement mortgage segment. So who's gonna take that? Eddie.
What's up, people? Good to see you guys. Yes, so as you guys, the ones that are not buried at home and like not looking at the news have heard, but interest rates have gone up quite a bit, as a matter of fact, and sharply. So it's become a very volatile market. We're seeing moves that we haven't seen really since the beginning of COVID happening again. And in all honesty, you know, from the beginning of February to now, we're talking about almost 0.5% in the 10-year treasuries. And how does that impact us? I mean, think about it. Remember that rule that we always tell you guys, a 10% effect of your purchasing power is a 1% change in interest rate. Well, we've gone up almost 0.5%. So you can assume automatically that your payments are up 5% from where they were before. You know, you have a $3,000 payment, it just went to $3,150, like that in a couple of weeks. So please, you guys, if you have people sitting on the sidelines, make sure that they're getting back with their lenders. If it's not Wes or Amanda or I, make sure that they were like, if we were pushing the envelope, especially with all these over asks offers out there, you know, that we're reapproving them. We're double checking. We're making sure they haven't incurred any new debt. We're making sure that they're still getting paid. They still have jobs. 10 million people are unemployed. So all I got to say is just be mindful and you know, let us make sure that you guys and our buyers are all in a really good position. And if you need us to cross qualify people, by all means, we'll do it all day long. And Wes has some information too.
All day long. And then we just wanted to add on there to touch on what Ed was talking about with bid over ask. Ed, Amanda, and myself also have access to a bid over ask tool that puts it in a nice visual so the clients can understand, what does that mean when I pay $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 plus over the asking price? It really gives them a good visual and a good handle on things. It uses local data from S&P's Case-Shiller Home Price Index and just ties everything up really nice. I've been using it for quite a while now with the way the market's going, and it's been very successful with the buyers that we're working with. So please come and see myself, Ed, or Amanda if you guys would like some assistance with that with your buyers. I would be happy to help them out. We'll have a class that's upcoming as soon as we can get a date on the books with Evie, how to get your buyer offer accepted and win the deal in the seller's market. So stay tuned for that date and time, and we look forward to seeing you then. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Wes and Eddie and the movement team. We're so grateful to have you guys. And everybody out there, please take advantage of these amazing colleagues of yours and let them help you and your clients. Please, please, please. All right, next, A+ Escrow, Justin.
Hey, well, I'm not Justin.
Oh, Robert, hey.
I'm going to speak for Justin today.
I love it.
Hi. Hello, everybody. I'm going to do this a little bit differently than what we typically do when we do our A+ Escrow 2 minutes. We had a situation, and this really probably speaks more to one of the things that Robert or Mark Miller would be talking about with risk management. Recently, we had this experience. Actually, I had the experience because this happened to be a transaction I was involved in, and I think it bears repeating. When you're a listing agent and you have received an offer from a buyer's agent, be certain that the language in that RPA and the counteroffers is exactly what you intend. I had, under reports, I had a transaction where under pest control, the request was they wanted a report from a licensed pest inspection company, and they wanted it to include Section 1 clearance. Well, I hadn't really seen someone word this quite this way. I felt like they weren't actually asking for a clearance. I looked at it as they were looking for a pest control report that included the information that it would take in order to get a clearance. Now, some of you may think, well, that seems a little, that I didn't read that all the way through. And I look back at it now and I think I really should have spent more time on that. I spoke to the agent and I said, you know, you need to put this into a request for repairs, which he said, I will do that, because my client wasn't agreeing to it at that point. When the escrow instructions were created, the escrow instructions made it very clear that there was going to be a Section 1 termite clearance paid for by the seller. And you know, I called my favorite escrow officer, Justin Brown. Justin did it exactly the way you're supposed to do it. He did not try to interpret anything. He took the language exactly as it was in the RPA, which leads me to my conclusion here. Always be sure that your counteroffers, or that whatever is written in that RPA, is exactly the way you want it to look when it comes out in escrow instruction form. Because once it's in an escrow instruction form, it's unlikely it's going to be changed. And you're past the point of being able to go back to the buyer's agent and say, you know, that's not really what I intended. It's a little late at that point. So read your contracts very thoroughly before you agree to them, and so that you know that your escrow officer can very easily interpret them and create the instructions you intend to be giving to your clients. And other than that, thank you everyone for your support of A+ Escrow, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate you. And that was some great intel to share with us. I really, really appreciate that. So without further ado, we're not going to do our pitches today, guys. We're not going to do our pitches as Evie sent out in the email about. So let's put those on our inner office page. But without further ado, let's turn it over to the guy that we are featuring twice, and he's so nice, Mr. Beebe. Go for it, brother.
Thank you, Mike. Can we give a thumbs up or a shout out to Mike Delgado, who's doing a great job emceeing? You know, when we switched to this Zoom format, we all kind of fumbled. You know, our mute buttons were always on, or our screens weren't working, or things were we weren't well backlit. But, you know, leading a team meeting in a Zoom format and making it seamless, it can present challenges if you've ever done it. And Mike is doing a superb job. So great job, Mike. So Bob, thank you very much for reinforcing exactly what we'll be kind of talking about today on risk management. And we have a special guest appearance, or special guest at the end of the call. We'll have a little conversation with this special person. At least she's special to me. But what Bob was talking about with contract language, be sure you know what the F you're putting in it, as broker speak would say, before you consummate a contract. That's where agents get in trouble. And I'm specifically addressing this today because as the market is heating up, or let's say, just say it's not heating up, it's fucking on fuego, right? I mean, you guys are doing your best to get transactions consummated in a challenged inventory market. I don't like using the word there's no inventory. There's inventory. It's challenged. And during a challenged inventory market, you're doing whatever you can to get the contract consummated. And you're throwing everything but the kitchen sink into that contract to, if you're representing a buyer, to get your offer accepted or even looked at or entertained. And as a listing agent, you're pretty much saying, if you want this property, write it like this, because this is what the seller wants to do. Unfortunately, sometimes what happens is most agents tend to write stuff into a contract, even on the listing side, that there's no clarity on it. And both buying agent and listing agent can be held at fault, and the fiduciary could have, a principal could have a claim against that agent if you're not doing what you need to do to protect them. Now, I've always said, I am always available for a conversation at nights and weekends if you're trying to get language into a contract you need help on, within reason. I'm not, my phone's pretty much off at 8 o'clock at night because I get up at 4 o'clock every day. But I'm available most nights and weekends. and I'll do the best to get back to you, as well as Mark is available too. It's not that we say we work 7 days a week. We're there for you when you really need to get this through. So we're gonna, if I can get, I actually have it, is screen control. We're gonna get into it because there's some stuff I wanna share today. And forgive me while I get this set up. And I'm gonna drop something into the chat box, and it is our Google Drive Office folder that some of the stuff we'll be talking about today will be housed in there. So let's get going on this. Can you all see that?
Yep, we see it, BB.
Perfect, thank you. So what today we're gonna go over these items. I'll give you some inside info at what's going on with the risk management committee that I sit on. We're going to talk about the iBuyer Zillow offers and what to do and what we're seeing right now. And this is a big issue right now. Cover a few things on flip transactions and the flip advisory and review that a little bit. And we're actually going to spend some time, majority of time on the appraisal and escalation clauses for offer acceptance and what not to do. And time permitted, I'm going to gauge the time because we have the guest speaker at the end. We'll address the market conditions advisory. Mark will want to speak on that. And of course, every risk management meeting, I talk about Mark's Miller initial review and final review to make sure you're reading them, because those are where we're delivering a lot of the information you're going to need during this time. And maybe some Q&A at the end. So here's the inside scoop. Remember, I'm going to talk about this so you're all well aware. The new RPA will be delivered this December in 2021, and they're going to start training on it around April through May. And so look for that. And when we say we're going to start training, meaning you guys need to start attending training on the new contract. It's going from its current format of 10 pages up to 16. So if you don't know the 10 pages that are in there right now, you might have a little challenging when it becomes 16 pages. And my expectation is during that period, when we do get to that, and automatically it's the new purchase agreement in December of this year, there's going to be a lot of agents that aren't going to know how to use it. Because automatically it's going to update in zip forms, and they make an update in December, like I think it's 15th or 16th. Mark, you can drop it in the chat box if you know the actual date when they update their zip forms. But be prepared, because at that point you're going to have to know how to actually use that thing. Okay, iBuyers and offers and how to handle them. So we had an incident this week that one of our agents submitted an offer on a purchase agreement, a standard car form purchase agreement, and they got back to them the purchase agreement rewritten on an iBuyer offer form. In other words, they took everything that our agent submitted, sent it back to them in the iBuyer offer form. And the agent thought, well, okay, let's get this deal done. We'll just get it signed and move forward. So the biggest challenge is that within the current version of the purchase agreement, there's certain protections and clauses in there that will protect your buyers and also protect the sellers as well too. There's also certain things within the purchase agreement that allows for certain disclosures to be made available. And this certain iBuyer contract didn't have some of those disclosures that were statutorily required, meaning they're required by law. And then, so how do you handle that? So I bring this up now because I want you to be made aware there are homes for sale in the MLS currently that are being handled through this iBuyer type format. So what is an iBuyer? So there's, and I'm remiss of the names of some of the iBuyer programs, but I know Zillow is one of them. They go out, they buy a house, and they make an offer for cash on a house from someone, and it's a non-traditional sale. So they buy that, and then because maybe they make it easy for the seller to want to sell the house to them because there's no inspection, there's There's no repairs, nothing. And they're doing it where they're doing it on a discount. And then that company will turn it right around and resell it on the MLS to the open market. That's called an iBuyer format. And it's meant for simplicity for the seller that doesn't want to hassle with the traditional type sale, but they know that they're selling it at a discount. So be aware when you do get a transaction like this within your opportunity for your buyers, you have a responsibility to guide that buyer, to have them understand, hey, if you accept this contract the way the iBuyer contract is written, there's certain things within this contract that, one, I've never seen it. I don't know how to advise on it, and you can't, because you can't make a legal interpretation on something. So I highly recommend you speak to an attorney about this, so that the attorney can understand it and interpret for you what exactly it means. Now, whether or not they see the attorney, that's not the issue. Probably about 80 to 90% of the time, they won't want to spend the money on an attorney. They're just going to say, well, no, we'll just sign it. But you have the responsibility to advise them to speak to an attorney. The other thing you should do is memorialize that conversation in an email back to them and say, based upon our conversation we had in regards to the purchase of 1234 Main Street, I have advised you that the purchase agreement that the XYZ company sent back and you want to sign to purchase this home, I cannot advise you on the legalities of it. I highly recommend you speak to a qualified real estate attorney. If you don't have an attorney, I can connect you to the San Diego County Bar Association legal referral hotline and see if they can refer you to one. That's your responsibility, but that's also your get out of free jail card if something ever happens. And I've said this many times, whenever an agent is hauled in for anything that, like maybe a grievance or they're in a claim where the insurance has to pay out a claim, the best thing you can do is write it down, and memorialize every conversation you have in an email. Because the buyer could claim, well, you never told me to do this. If they get into the transaction, close escrow, and then they find out that the home has this massive foundation repair issue or some, I don't know, maybe it's haunted by ghosts or whatever, and they have no recourse, but because the contract basically says from the iBuyer seller, hey, we never lived in the house, we don't know anything about it. And we're not getting any disclosure to you because we don't know anything about the house. And that's really kind of what the iBuyer format is. They're going to get off by saying, we don't know anything about the house. We can't provide disclosures that tell you anything about the house. And that's kind of their get out of jail free card. So you have a duty also to advise that buyer to say, you know what, I know nothing about this house, and I highly recommend that you spend some time and really investigate the house. So you go through the buyer inspection advisory and say what that BIA says is, or the BA says is, hey, you're buying a house. We recommend you inspect it. And if the inspector says you get a secondary inspection on a roof or plumbing or heating or air, then we recommend you do that as well. Because the buyer has the duty to investigate and inspect on every purchase that they make. That's how you guys guide your buyers properly and protect you and the brokerage at the same time. The other thing you should also do, and we're working on this at Risk Management Committee, in zip forms, they have in the letters library, they have acting against broker advice. And that's a letter that says, hey, we're going to help you do this, but we're saying you shouldn't do it this way. So we'll do it for you, but you're acting against our advice. That's the one thing that will save you in any potential claim, because they can't come back to you and say, well, you never told me. Well, actually, I did, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer. When we had this conversation, I sent you this email. Then I also followed it up with a letter that stated, this is against our broker advice for you to move forward with this transaction unless you do X, Y, Z. So questions and thoughts on that? That was a lot to digest.
Robert, I have something
Yes.
to add to that if I can.
Sure.
So, hello everyone. Some of the things that might see in some of these contracts are things like passive contingency removal, which if you don't know what that means, it means that a date arrives and the buyer's contingency is automatically released without any action on their part. That's completely, contrary to the way the car purchase agreement works, where you have to have active contingency removal. There was a question in chat about how these iBuyers can get away with not providing statutorily required disclosures, and that is something that we've been talking to CAR about at a state level. There's a lot of other brokers who are addressing the same thing. Just FYI, parties in a contract, buyers and sellers, cannot waive something that is statutorily required. They can't say, okay, well, we agree that even though it's required under law, we won't do it. You cannot do that. And we have an internal procedure that we use when a seller fails to provide a disclosure that we call the missing disclosures report. And in that process, we provide a blank disclosure to the buyer for signature by the buyer only, without any disclosure information on it other than the property address and the party names. And then that mitigates the buyer's allegation to the buyer's agent to say, hey, if you knew I was supposed to get this and I didn't get it from the seller, why didn't you give it to me? So we have those steps in place, but this is an evolving issue right now, and we'll be working on it more in the future, let you know as we find new information.
Thank you, Mark. Great advice on that. All right, moving on, flip transactions. We have within our own personal documents, we have what's called a flip advisory. So a flip advisory basically stipulates for a flip property, for those of you that refresher, if you are new and don't know what that is. A flip property is where a separate party, a developer, or they're called flippers, will take an older home, fix it up, and resell it for higher than they pay for it and make a profit on it. Well, these are a bedrock of, shall we say, litigation in Southern California, because majority of the time, a lot of these flippers are putting lipstick on a pig and not really fixing the pig. And what you need to know this, when you see a flip transaction, now your buyers are going to be all in love because they're going to walk into see this beautiful new home and, oh, it just looks gorgeous, but they don't know what's under the hood. Meaning maybe the flipper didn't do any electrical, no plumbing, no foundation, and they're not going to provide the proper disclosures. So the flip advisory is something that you will use in counsel with your buyer. And Mark, can you please put that in the chat box? Because it's hard for me to do everything, but drop that advisory into the chat box. The flip advisory will kind of be what you need to give to the buyer before they sign the contract, and they're going to sign it at contract consummation as well too. But it's the advisory that we've put together, and that tells them, hey, here's the pitfalls and the good, the bad, and the ugly about flips, and the duty for them to really, really inspect that flip and understand exactly what they're getting into so that they're aware, hey, it's a pretty new home, but under the hood, it might not be so pretty. Another thing you should be cautionary with when it comes to flip transaction is who is doing the flip. We have a great strategic marketing partner in our office that is a qualified, very highly qualified and skilled flip company, and they do great work. Are they perfect 100% of the time? Probably not. But for the majority, they're considered a really good flip transaction. If you're going to one of these flip properties and here's the challenge we're seeing across the board, and I know a few of you agents are on this call, you've run across this, is you get into the flip transactions and you have this list of requests for repairs because you really figured out that the property is a piece of shisa and the buyer wants stuff repaired. And you're getting closer to the close of escrow and the flipper is not getting the repairs done. And then there's a rate lock on the loan and there's timelines. and you're freaking out. The buyers are freaking out because they're renting an Airbnb and they got to rent the Airbnb a little bit longer because they can't move into their pretty new home. And then all these other things are happening. And the flipper says they're going to go fix stuff, and they don't fix stuff because they're on to their next property and they're trying to get that property fixed. Well, here's what the flippers are running against right now. They can't find the labor to come in and fix things. So the big challenge with that is they're probably behind because the labor has become so sparse, because we're in this market where the labor is really needed to help get that property where it's supposed to be. And then you end up, do we make a decision to extend close of escrow or close based upon whether they'll come in and fix after close of escrow, which would be against broker's advice. So these are the pitfalls with flip transactions. Please seek guidance on them. Investigate the flipper. How many flips do they have currently going on? If they're a one-time flip, I would really, if this is their first flip, I would really do some investigation on them. But if they're a systematized flip company and they've got stuff going and they know what they're doing, then your chances are you're pretty safe. But everybody thinks that they can watch those Saturday morning shows on HGTV and all of a sudden watch Flip This House, and then they're going to go make $100,000 on a house. So, all right. So appraisal and escalation clauses and for offer acceptance and what not to do. All right. So here's where I'm going to bring in the, this is the hotbed of activity that's going to really get you in trouble if you don't know what you're doing. And Mark and I shudder when we see some of the appraisal clauses that are in some of the contracts. And this is not just on the buy side. The listing agent can also be held equally responsible for the seller as well if they aren't understanding the contract language. So the reason why appraisal and escalation clauses are a challenge for you is because it requires you to craft language for an agreement, and you're not an attorney. And because you're not an attorney, you don't know what the heck you're doing. And you could really get your buyer in trouble if you're trying to craft something that could eventually not be exactly what you meant and end up with what Bob talked about earlier. Is you really have to understand the intention of what you're writing in that agreement. And as a broker, I just wish there were never any blank lines in the California purchase agreement, because it wouldn't allow agents to actually write anything else on it. So here's a scenario. The purchase agreement states buyer to pay $5,000 over a low appraisal. And that's one scenario that we've seen. So we use this as an example for a training. So here's the potential results of what happens. So let's say the purchase price is $400,000 and the appraisal is $390,000. Then the buyer would pay $395,000 based upon the scenario. However, if the appraisal is at $398,000, would the buyer then be paying $403,000? Any takers?
I would say you would have to give a cap or a max if your buyer is only approved, let's say for 400 or 401 to be safe.
Good answer, Aida. Yes, you've got to cap it, because when you just write buyer to pay $5,000 over low appraisal, there's no definitions on the bottom end or the low end. So you need to understand what those low end and high end is. Same result and potential result for number two. If the purchase price is $400 and the appraisal comes in at $390, the buyer would pay $5,000, but would the seller be expected to reduce the price to $395? It's not defined. And that's where the listing agent would get in trouble. Scenario result number one is where the buyer's agent could have a claim against them by the buyer, and result number two is where the listing agent would have a claim against the seller, would have a claim against the listing agent. So why do you want to know what you're crafting? So perhaps a clause like this would be better. And the reason I gave you the Google Drive link is because this appraisal and price escalation clause is in that folder in Google Drive. So you can have access to it, and we'll update it as necessary. The correct way would be, should the property appraisal be lower than the purchase price, the buyer will pay up to $5,000 to address the shortfall, not to exceed the purchase price. So that takes care of result number 1, where it caps it at $400,000. The parties agree that the appraisal amount and the buyer contribution will be the revised purchase price. So that takes care of potential result number 2, where the seller will have a clear understanding that the purchase price is $400,000. So if the seller and the listing agent accept this and the appraisal is $390,000, the buyer would add $5,000, making the purchase price $395,000, reduced from the offer price of $400,000. Does that make sense to everybody? You can do a thumbs up. You can do yes in the chat box. I can see that. Okay. Here's some other notes though. You need to ensure that the buyer has the cash available to meet the terms of an appraisal escalation clause. This additional amount cannot be part of the loan amount. And I ran into this scenario this week. If a buyer had no money to put in over, they didn't have any cash, yet they wanted to do an an escalation clause. I'm sorry, an appraisal clause. And I'm like, well, how much cash do they have? Well, they don't have any. Well, then you can't do it. Because the concept behind an appraisal clause is the buyer's going to come in with that extra cash. If they don't have any to put in, the lender's not going to put it in the loan, right? The lender's only going to loan on what it appraised for, okay? Now let's move on to escalation clauses. The escalation clause that we recommend: in the event of a competing offer, the buyer will pay blank dollars over the highest offer's net price up to a purchase price of X dollars. So it's the amount they'll pay over, whatever that dollar amount is, but then it puts in a cap. And I about had a heart attack this week when Mike Law called me and wanted me to help him craft an escalation clause, and the buyer was willing to pay the highest amount over that I'd ever seen. And I'm like, that's some baller money, man. These people really want these houses. And that's where I know you guys are really fighting tooth and nail to get your offers accepted. And the buyers are willing to do whatever it takes. So in the event of an escalation, the seller provides proof of a competing purchase contract. Seller warrants that competing offers are true, valid, and is an arm's length transaction. Meaning it's not a cousin that makes an offer on the property for the seller just to get the price up, okay? So that's the recommended escalation clause language that we recommend on this. And then as always, seek broker guidance on any of the clauses listed above. Each agreement has its own particular issues and scenarios. And then reminder, your duty as their agent is to advise them to seek the advice of an attorney if they have any questions about legal issues in the contract. Because remember, you are not attorneys and you cannot guide your clients with the legal language we're putting in here for you. Whether or not they seek an attorney is another story, but your duty is to advise them. All right. Any quick questions on that? Because we are running out of time and we're not going to cover some of the other stuff. We're going to go right into our guest interview.
I have a quick question on the arm's length transaction.
Yes.
Because Gary and I are a partnership and we have a lot of teams. Does arm's length mean that somebody else on our team cannot be the other buyer's agent, or what does that mean? What is arm's length?
Arm's length for the seller.
Meaning a relative of the seller.
Well, good question. Would it be an arm's length transaction if you represented? No, because there's still another principal. It would be the principal that Gary would be representing.
Okay.
You know, would it be a principal, a cousin of the principal's?
Got
Robert,
it. Thank you.
Robert, I have another question. In the appraisal escalation, in the price escalation clause, what if the appraisal comes in like at $380 instead of $400? Then that $5,000 would not go would mean that the seller would have to agree to reducing price for $15,000, and maybe he doesn't want to do that.
Well, that's why that scenario says that the buyer's only going to put in up to 5,000.
Yeah, that's all right for the buyer, but the other part of the signature says that the seller and buyer agree that that will be the price. But what if the seller does not want to agree that to be the price and they want to negotiate further?
In that particular scenario that I addressed, if the property appraises below the amount that the buyer is willing to bring up the additional, then the buyer has the option to cancel the agreement. The seller doesn't have to accept the lower appraisal. So the offer is kind of like goes nowhere, or they renegotiate the contract.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, renegotiating.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that you wrote that was like the seller has to agree to that type of scenario with only going down $5,000. But what if they have to go down $15,000?
Yeah, it's just one example, Judy, to kind of give you a framework to it. Obviously, every transaction would be unique, and the parties can negotiate and agree to what they want. It's just that what we were trying to bring out in that example is that don't assume that the buyer is going to reduce the price if you don't specifically state that in
the seller
offer.
Don't assume the seller is going to reduce the price.
Right.
Yeah. There's many, as I said, that's why you seek guidance, because there's many scenarios, Judy. Okay. All right, let's move into our special guest. Is Alicia on?
I'm here.
Hi, Alicia. How are you?
Oh, wonderful Wednesday.
So many of you might know our sassy Alicia in our office, one of our great agents and even greater coaches, and has a great team that she coaches. And Alicia has had a little life path change in the past few months. Her and I shared our December getting medical treatments taken care of. I drove her and she drove me. And her diagnosis was a little different than mine. So Alicia, would you care to share? And we have, as part of your family, what's going on with you?
So yeah, Robert and I had some treatments, which I'm definitely not as old as Robert, so it's a little strange for me to be getting this procedure done. But I was like, yay, let's skip down the street. I'm gonna go get this procedure done with my bestie.
We did it on different days, though. Remember that.
Yes, different days. I was diagnosed with a squamous cell carcinoma, which for, I guess, everyday people that aren't familiar with specific terms, that is stage 3A anal cancer.
Yeah. So that was kind of a life-altering event. As old as I am, I've been through diagnoses and scares that you sit back and you, for me, what I look back on is I realize that you recognize your mortality. And sometimes a health diagnosis or a health scare can finally put you face to face with your mortality, because we all think we're going to live forever. What kind of went through your mind when that happened, other than going internal and being Alicia at times?
What's that supposed to mean?
Keeping it in.
I think that I probably still am, probably in denial a little bit, because, well, I'm just going to compare everything to Robert. Compared to Robert, I am fairly young. And this isn't supposed to happen to people my age. I didn't feel any different until recently when I started getting some pretty major side effects, but I've never had anything major like this happen in my life. And it's been slightly difficult because I don't have any family here, I guess, besides you guys. So I guess I should say I don't have any blood family here.
Not as good as this family.
Of course.
Blood family is so overrated.
And also we have Stephen, who, if you guys don't know, is basically a cancer expert. So the staff and the leadership here have been phenomenal. So if you guys don't know them personally, or you don't take advantage of those relationships, I highly, highly recommend it.
So obviously, when you get that diagnosis, you go through some, you know, you do a lot of the screening, you meet with oncologists and doctors. Your life becomes meeting with a doctor almost all the time, and this doctor for this doctor for that. How's your life changed in your program? What's your treatment regimen like?
Every day I drive to La Jolla for radiation. I chose, for the chemo aspect of it, I decided to go the oral route. So I take some pretty aggressive pills every day. I've been doing this for 5 weeks now. I'm in week 5. It's definitely changed my schedule, and I have to thank my coaching clients, especially my growth clients, who get weekly calls with me, because they've been nothing short of phenomenal in being open and flexible with me. So it's definitely taken a couple hours out of my day every day to get this done.
So when I coach you as the coach and coach you as a friend, and you always hate it when I say, well, what's the lesson in all this?
Do I have mute access?
What's the lesson? So what do you think? And I know it's still pretty young in what's when you got the diagnosis, and the lessons won't come. They'll be coming for many months and many years to come. But short term, what do you think the biggest lesson, or a lesson that you would like to share with the group? It could be about
well, for one would be listen to your body. For two, which I think everybody on this call can, I guess, relate to, is there are no real estate emergencies. Your family and your health will always come before real estate. So just keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. And then anything else?
I wish this didn't happen during COVID, because it sucks not being able to be with people.
So, you know, with Alicia, if you don't know, she's a high I, although sometimes I question that because a lot of times her D and C gets in the way. And we're like, this girl has this high I in her, but she does. She's a people person. She's, you know, during pre-COVID days, her biggest challenge, self-admittedly, she'd come work in the office and she'd always want to go talk to people in the coffee break room. Hey, let's go for a walk. Let's do this. Let's do that. So I think COVID's been challenging for all of us, especially for high I's as well, because you need that people contact. So your treatments, you've been doing it for 4 weeks. It's a 6 week, and you're going to be done in 2 weeks. Are you looking forward to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so far, the treatment's been pretty well tolerated, except for one little minor issue, right? But you're working through that.
At first, the side effects weren't really there, so I also feel like that's kind of why I was in denial. But the last 2 weeks have been pretty rough. So I'm very much looking forward to getting this taken care of and done and over with.
Well, my lesson for you is to, when this happened, I said, well, you know, you're with the right person here, because look at the stuff that I've changed, or that I've gone through in my journey here with Keller Williams. And of course, I can't look at Ashley right now, which is why I'm holding. But when I had my injury a couple of years ago, this office really stood up. They stand up. We are a family, good or bad. We're family here, and we're all connected. And when that happened to me, everybody kicked into hyperdrive, did a fundraiser, always supported to bring me food and help out, give me drives because I couldn't drive. And this office is doing the same. So in light of that, we're actually doing one of the things with cancer treatments comes a lot of expense. And Alicia will be paying, she has insurance, the blessings of insurance, but a large copay. And so we're having her apply for a KW Cares grant. And Keller Williams Metro has always been a huge contributor to KW Cares over the course of the year. And we haven't really, and Ashley can probably speak to it, haven't really gotten back, haven't had a lot of people actually apply for grants. So at times like this, I'm glad that it's something like that there, and we've been such a great contributor. So we'll be doing a fundraiser to supplement the grant that Alicia will be applying for. And Bridget on our ALC committee is on the call today to talk about exactly what we'll be doing. Ms. Potterton.
Thank you, Broker Bob. First of all, I want to take just a minute to say, Alicia, you are an inspiration, and I am so proud of you for sharing your story. I wasn't supposed to cry because Alicia and I have already talked through this. I don't know why I'm getting so emotional, but I just want to say thank you for sharing your story with all of us. And please keep sharing your journey with our family. And with that, I want to share a couple of things that we're going to be doing to help out Alicia. So I see in the chat box, a lot of you are asking how I can help. And thank you so much for stepping up and wanting to help Alicia. And here's a couple ways that you can help. First of all, we've decided to make our March social event, which is 2 weeks from today. It's going to be a St. Patrick's Day scavenger hunt. We are going to make that a donation optional event. We haven't charged for any virtual events, as you all know, since we went virtual. For those of you who can donate, we'd love to see you donate $10, $20, whatever you can do to attend the event. It's 2 weeks from now, right after the team meeting. If you can't donate, please feel free to come. Our number one goal is to always have our family with us during this time. So even if you can't donate, we want you there. There's a couple ways that you can donate. Metro has set up a Venmo account. There it is. Thank you, Eve. That is our Venmo account. So if you want to donate, you can donate there. And if you want to donate for the coming up event, you can donate there as well. If you just want to donate, you can just do it directly through that, whether or not you can come to the event. The other option too would be to do it on, and sorry, I keep forgetting, we don't call them green sheets anymore, but if you have a closing coming up, the same way that you can set up for KW Cares or the Crisis Fund, we can do it that way. So there's a lot of different ways that you can give. The Venmo is probably the easiest. So if you don't have Venmo and you want to donate, let me know and we'll figure out something else. But we'll have some events coming up. I want you guys to keep looking into that. And I want to thank everybody here for helping Alicia. Our office always shines the most when we're struggling. We are great at being underdogs. And I want to say thank you to those of you that have jumped up right away to want to help Alicia. I know we can do it. I know we can help her get through this. The last thing she should have to worry about is finances when she needs to focus on her health. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and I will see you guys 2 weeks from today, right after the team meeting. We'll make sure that we have a lot of fun, a lot of laughter, and I can't wait for all of us to be able to give Alicia a big, big hug as soon as it's safe. Love you guys.
Wow.
Thanks, Bridget.
Wow. So I'm not even going to try to follow that up, first of all. I'm just so grateful for people like Alicia that have the courage to show just that, you know what, put it out there, let your people know, let your family and friends know we can get through anything. And this family is a hell of a good one, guys. So let's rally behind our loved ones here like Alicia, and let's get this going. I forgot to mention real quick, guys, before we take off, we got another new addition that I forgot to mention earlier. And there it is right there, everybody. Check that out. Ariana has had baby Angelo. So he's in the house, the youngest, I believe, to join Metro's roster to date. But I see some promise there for sure. But other than that, guys, you're the best family out there. I'm so grateful to be a part of it. And let's make this year the best one yet. So let's go out there and get it, whether it's rain or shine. Let's make it happen, guys. So I love you guys. Have an amazing rest of your week, and we'll see you soon, all right? Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you.